Andor Season 2 is getting ready to drop sometime in 2025. They wrapped up filming in February of 2024, and now we await the announcement for when it might come. Of course, Skeleton Crew is the next show up in the Disney lineup, but I found an interview of Tony Gilroy talking about Season 2 of Andor. And this interview is over a year old, but he dropped some really interesting ideas and thoughts about the upcoming season. And then we're also going to look at some of the other parts of the interview that really are intriguing, especially in light of all of the mess that has come in Star Wars over just the last few months. His thoughts and ideas about how to direct and how to run and how to write a Star Wars show. Man, there's a lot here. So let's just jump in.
I just finished, like I told you, 2 days ago, I finished the last script of the 24, the last one. Right. And the last sequence of it, it's the third episode of...
And what he means by the 24 is it's the end of the 12 episodes, because he looks at Andor as two parts of one novel. So when he's saying the end of 24, he means I've just finished writing and wrapping up all of the writing of Season 2 of Andor. Listen what he says.
It's odd, but it's the third episode of the show. And it requires a really huge action crescendo. And it'll be one of the scripts that it'll have my credit on. It's my script. And so I'm building this, they're like Swiss watches, what you have to do. I mean, they're really... I've been writing a lot of those scenes a long time. I'm very tired of writing them. And I'm like, this is the last Swiss watch I'm building. I'm going to build the best one I can because I don't want to do this anymore. What's really interesting about them is you work your ass off on them for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's just grindy mathematical work. And at the end, if you do it right, it looks like nothing. You get there and you're like, well, of course, this is what it has to be. It's like inevitable. It's it's so clean at the end, and it's like a magic trick, and nobody can see the effort that went into it. And it's just, I don't know if I'm ever going to do it again, Pete. I've done a lot of them. And my brother John is there. We built a lot of these crescendo sequences where they're not just action, but we get...
John, who's editing and is a producer.
He's a producer.
Well. And Dan wrote several episodes.
Dan did too, yeah.
This is the Gilroy brothers.
Yeah, but Johnny's my hostage in London, so he's really on it. Danny's a drive-by, but Johnny's really on. But we built so many, in so many movies and everything, where we get, 7 plates in the air and an action sequence and everything. And we have these crescendos. We have one at the end of episode 3, and we have the raid at El Dani, and we have the prison break, and there's so many things going on. And they're a thing. They're a real thing, and we've learned how to do it. The funeral. And when we went to do the funeral, Ben Karen and his team, they came in and Jan, who's the editor on it, they had all tiptoed around sequences like that, but we'd made a bunch of them before, and we basically said, this is how we do it. And they went and bettered our system.
Just listening to Tony Gilroy talk about the minute detail that goes in to all of these crescendo sequences. And did you catch what he said? I know he's talked a lot about Andor Season 1 in that clip, but he had just finished writing that sequence, and he doesn't want to do another one of these. He's hoping that this can be his masterpiece, that Andor Season 2 can be the sequence, the crescendo to end all crescendos, that he's put more energy and time and effort into it. And if you think back to Andor Season 1, the things like the Narkina 5 crescendo scene particular is one of the ones they talk about, and really that whole prison break and all of the buildup that happened in that episode arc, it was beautifully done. The funeral, same type of thing. All of this coming together, and it just makes me start to think that what if we had this level of care and thought? Because when we look at these other shows, when we look at these other movies, it feels like no care and no thought. It feels like what's put together is just mishmashed, shoved into a 30-minute block window for an episode, and it doesn't really connect the way that the writer thinks it should. But clearly, I mean, Tony Gilroy's been doing this. I do think there's some that are going to say he's not really even a Star Wars guy. He doesn't love Star Wars. He doesn't even really know Star Wars that deeply. And that's actually probably true. But the care of which he puts into the show and the way that he approaches wanting to make sure that what they're doing is excellent, I don't know. It goes far above some of these others, especially when you hear what he has to say next and you compare it to the way that Acolyte was handled. Man, this just makes Disney look even worse. Editor Jeremy here. I realized I didn't mention this when I was filming, but that's really the total of what he says about Andor Season 2. The rest of our video here is going to be analyzing what he said in the way he approaches script writing, in the way he approaches doing all. And again, he's doing this interview as they're doing all of the stuff for Season 2, so I think it still applies. But that's what he had to say about Season 2. Let's see what he says about his approach to script writing and especially how bad this makes Disney Star Wars look. Oh, that hurt. You ever burp that just stuck there? Oh. Ow. Let's keep watching.
To talk about so many important things in a really vivid, exciting, anxious story, in a real ripping yarn. I get to talk about all the things that I've been accumulating my whole life long and probably wouldn't have an opportunity to speak about because you can't slam things you want. And
you can't slam things you want into the script. He caught himself. He went back. But did you hear that? He's so excited to talk about the things he can because this is a stage and a way to do it in the story because the story is what's important. He's not slamming things in that don't belong in the story. Listen to, again, he's going to talk a little bit more about his role of studying revolutions and studying history that inform the way that he tells this story. This doesn't seem like it should be this impressive. Like, isn't this what should be happening with Star Wars? But instead we get Acolyte instead, right? And we get Ahsoka, which is just not well thought out at all. And hire good writers. Hire good writers.
so I get it's a story about revolution, and it's a story about people, normal people, being thrust into the revolution. We don't have any, we don't have any Jedi, we don't have any lightsabers, right. We don't have any of that stuff. We don't have royal family. This is, as we say, it's a show that takes place in the kitchen, not in the dining room.
And again, some people push back on that, said this didn't feel like Star Wars, that I wanted those things for it to be Star Wars. Even Tony Gilroy will say that this was intended for people who might have had an aversion to Star Wars to get into Star Wars. I think that failed because no one understood or knew who Cassian Andor was. And I understand the pushback that some of you might have to that. But the overall outcome of what was created was just so good. And as they're continuing to do that with that level of care and that level of precise detail to Andor Season 2, I mean, if it stinks, well, there's no hope for anything to be good, right? That's how I feel.
Really and then to have 1,500 pages of original story to be able to tell about revolution and what happens to people over a 5-year period of time with a truly almost messianic character at the beginning and middle of it, who's going through something really extreme. That's a pretty unique opportunity, and we've really poured ourselves into it. So yeah, I'm sure I'll be as proud of this as anything.
Yeah. But it's very relevant. There's a lot of issues going on that are going on in the world today in their own way, and that's why I'm sure it intrigued you as a writer.
It's really true, and it's kind of a sneaky answer, but I'm not being cynical when I say it, that it's you get to use, because it's Star Wars, because it's removed, and because it's fairly articulated. The 5 years that I'm dealing with has a canonical aspect to it. There are events and historical events that I have to pay attention to.
He has to pay attention to canon. He has to pay attention to lore. He can't just do his own thing. He has some guardrails to follow, and it actually makes him more cautious. That's interesting.
Things that are happening. They're actually, it's a good lane, but you can deal with an incredible number of issues that are contemporary, and some of them are very radioactive. But I don't have to pull a comp from the headlines.
Listen to this. Listen to how he approaches addressing issues that he says can even be inflammatory, can be issues of the day. Like, take note, young writers or anyone at Disney, this is what you do if you want to make your show have a commentary on something today. This is how you do it. This is exactly how you do it.
I have 4,000 years worth of history to pull from. So and I've been a history nerd my whole life, and it's a stupid dinner table amateur historian in that sense. But I've been fascinated with revolution and betrayal and war and leadership my whole life. And so I can cherry pick all through every revolution that I know about. And they're all different and they're all the same, but this happened here, and this is the French Resistance, and this is the Haitian Revolution, and oh my God, this is Thomas Paine, and this is from the Charles I. And this is this is the Russian Revolution, and this is what happened in the show trials, and this has happened, and so I can free myself from being pinned down to contemporary issues, and I can free myself from interviewers who want me to make comps between, oh my God, you're telling the story of what's happening now.
Well, that's what they're reading into it.
Well, that's, I want the benefit of that without the responsibility.
Right. And there it is, right? He's going to retell some of these stories throughout history. He's going to pull from all these different things because it's about telling a human story, not getting across an agenda to communicate something today. And that's what made Andor feel so grounded, feel so real, feel so connected to reality, even though this isn't a galaxy far, far away, because he approaches it that way. It wasn't a desire to communicate these modern day motifs just because you have to communicate these things for it to be a show that you want to tell a piece of yourself. And I think that takes a really good writer to be able to do that, to communicate something that might be universally true or they see as true, but yet not go so blatantly so that it's about you, the writer. I just find it intriguing that he's pulling from all these other revolutions as he's pulling this together. This feels a lot like what George Lucas would have done.
So far, I'm getting away with it. No. But that's that goes back to your earlier question. Why is this so? It's the deepest, richest material I've ever had a chance to deal with.
It's just so refreshing to hear someone talk about Star Wars that way. But even more so, listen to the attitude that they have when it comes to the fans, the respect and the desire not to cater to fans, but to respect them. Kind of revolutionary for Disney these days, right? Let's see.
My attitude has been, and the attitude of the show is, as far out there as we get, and as much as we bend the tone and the idea of what to do, we could never, ever be cynical about it. We have to take it more seriously than anybody's ever taken it. We're never winking. We're never kidding it. And so we have this mix of people who know nothing about Star Wars on our show, and then we have a bunch of people on the show that are huge nerds, and it's the marriage of knowledge and history mixed with a real ambition to take it someplace else, with a hopefully respect for. I want the respect of that audience. Now, I do read what they, there's no way of doing it and not being controversial.
What more could be said? Again, that is the way to go about this. That clip has aged so well. That was a year ago. That Tony Gilroy sat down and had that conversation. And everything he's saying is just exactly what Star Wars and Lucasfilm need to do. It gives me hope again. I was still hopeful for Andor Season 2, and I'm going to continue to be hopeful for Andor Season 2. But it also reminds me how bad the writing has been, how bad the directing has been, how bad the management of the PR and the handling of the fans and all of it. the lore, the canon, the respect for source material, how that was just all thrown out the window with Acolyte. And I don't think my fear is this, and I've said this on other videos, my fear is that people aren't even going to support the good things anymore because they've already gone. And then there's some of us still here going like, no, please watch the things that are good, ignore the things that are bad, and maybe, just maybe, we can get this back on track. I don't know. Tell me what you think down below. What do you think of Andor Season 2? What do you think of Tony Gilroy's comments? Would love to hear from you. Thanks for being here. If you've made it all the way through, let me know down in the comments below. What do you want to see next? Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, the Force will be with you always.